So you might be wondering why I'm not with my mask. My mask is very much here, right? So I advise everybody to wear it. So first, let me thank CIIC and especially Mr. Pervez, my good friend, for giving me this opportunity. And thanks for not asking me to speak on COVID, rather on something interesting and different. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and it's my pleasure being here. So today's talk is going to be on health technology validation. For the next 30 to 40 minutes, we will touch upon few areas on clinical validation. And after that, let me take your questions. Can you see the slides move?
Yes, sir, it's visible, sir. You can proceed.
All right. Okay. So the quick objective of the today's talk is to basically understand what is a validation. There's a difference between validation and feedback. I think many a times, I think there's always a confusion or an overlap between both, which people are not able to differentiate. So let me talk about what is a validation. Let's understand that. And what is a feedback and what is a clinical trial, and when you need a feedback versus when you actually need a clinical trial. We're going to also speak on some of the clinicians' expectations or doctors' expectations on how to speak our language. When we say it's validated or validation or clinical trial, what actually a doctor means. So we're going to understand a little bit on doctors' expectations of quality and strength of evidence. How do you actually clinically validate something in a hospital? So we will briefly touch upon the process of clinical validation. And I'm also going to give you some important information on what kind of right influencers you should use so that you can market your product and also implement your innovations in different hospitals. And what are the legal frameworks we should be aware of. So we're going to be briefly touching upon all this for the next 30 to 40 minutes. In case if I'm going too fast, kindly interrupt me. If you've got any doubts, you can either type it in the chat box, or I think at the end of the session, we all will get an opportunity to ask questions, I believe. So this is an overall objective of today's program. So let me move on. So let's start with validation, the term validation. What do we understand by the term validation? What is the definition of the term validation? Basically, it is an opinion on accuracy and something which you can legally and officially accept. If you could look at my slides, I've clearly highlighted something which is officially accepted. So that's what we need to be a bit careful while understanding this. So broadly, this validation can be divided into two. One is a feedback and other one is an evidence. Our predominant talk today is going to be focused on the second arm, which is on creating an evidence for your innovation. So let's look at what is a feedback or where you need a feedback. Feedback is typically when you have an idea, you want to get a feedback on whether is it a good idea, especially in healthcare. Or when you have a proof of concept, you want to get a feedback from the user groups on the proof of concept. So that's one arm to it. A good example for something is like your EMR, electronic medical records, your teleconsultation apps. This all will typically fall into a feedback category, where you don't need a clinical validation as such, but you will have a user feedback for it. So if you typically look at it, these are typically non-clinical. These are process enablers and value adds. This doesn't directly interfere with clinical outcomes or recommend any type of a clinical intervention. So if you have something like this, typically a feedback would help you. How to get this feedback and from whom? Eventually I will detail it as we go further. Let's come to the second arm, which is creating evidence. So this is where the complexity lies, right? Whenever there is a clinical decision enabler, whenever there is an innovation which you think the end user is going to use to make decisions about clinical management of a patient, where it typically involves a doctor, then you definitely need a clinical validation to prove your point. One good example is for new drugs and therapies and things like that. Your AI diagnosis on certain aspects. A good example is now in this COVID times, people are talking about AI-based diagnosis of an X-ray versus a traditional blood test to confirm COVID, right? These kind of stuff. So broadly, feedback and validation is very different. Whenever it is only pertaining to non-clinical process enabler, a typical feedback would help. However, if it is a clinical intervention, then definitely you need to have some kind of a clinical trial to back your concept. So we will see all these concepts in detail going forward. Let me first talk a little bit about the broad scope of validation. So the reason I put this slide here is many a times in reality, we see people come and approach an hospital or a doctor during this stage where you're already in a design process or you are in a design output. The most common mistake which we see from most of the innovators today or entrepreneurs is you don't get the typical end user involved during your idea stage itself. Healthcare is slightly different when you see, when you are innovating a product. You need to understand who is your customer in healthcare. Very often we tend to think it's the patients who are your customers. Because interestingly so, that's not the case. Most of the times it's actually your doctors and the hospital is your customer, right? So that's why it's very important for you to understand the problem statement which you are picking up. Is it something real and logical to Indian context? So you need to have your idea validated. Unfortunately, if you don't do that, and if you come in for a validation of a product which is already evolved to a certain extent, but without any clinical advice, it becomes very, very difficult. We will see that in the future slides as we go further. So here is a quick tips for those who are trying to get your idea validated. I would call it PICO formulation. You can just remove this, very simple. The first one is you need to have a clear problem statement to get a feedback from somebody. Who's your customer? That's the primary question. Is it the hospital, or is it the patient, or is it the doctor? So clearly, if it's a patient, what kind of patients are we addressing? So is it a particular type of a chronic ailment, or is it an acute illness in certain type of patients? Or if it's a problem, what kind of a problem is it? Is it a management or a process-oriented problem or a clinical problem? So then it comes to interventions. What kind of an interventions are you proposing? It's a clinical or non-clinical intervention. Comparison of interventions if it's something is available before. For example, the previous ventilators compared to this one is much cheaper, but the concept remains the same, something like that. And you're going to compare outcomes, which is non-clinical versus clinical. So when you want a feedback for your idea, so clearly you need to have these 4 things mapped out in your mind so that you can get the right group to validate it for you or give a feedback for this. And this is exactly the stage where you will find a clinical mentor. Let me tell you why a clinical mentor is very important, especially in healthcare innovation. That's because not just to guide you only through the idea, but eventually when you come to a phase where you need to clinically validate your innovation, it is this clinical mentor who's going to be helping you to take you through that process. Once I come to those slides, you'll understand why that process is complicated and why you actually need a clinician or a doctor to help you to go through that process. So this is in broad about feedback. So let me touch a little bit about giving a feedback on the product which you already have or which you have already developed. Most of the times we as clinicians, we only get to see many of the innovators coming up with such products at this stage, not at the idea stage. Unfortunate because in our country, there is no platform or a bridge where we can connect directly to the innovators, or innovators could connect to institutions or doctors to find out what is the actual healthcare needs and problems. Unfortunately, we don't have an open platform. Of course, we are trying to build out few platforms through institutions like KAHO and through various channels like KAHOTech. This is still a work in progress. So many times we get to see an interesting product brought to us for kind of an opinion or a validation or a feedback. But the feeling is that most of the times it's something which is nice, but unfortunately this is not something which is solving my problem today. And also doctors are typically time-starved, so most of them may not have adequate time to spend on something which comes randomly on their way to give a feedback on. So what they usually do is they'll try to give you maybe about 5 positives and 5 negatives about something. And eventually at the end of the day, we are not going anywhere together. So that's a problem if you start involving somebody in the later stage. That's the reason why I said you need to start having mentors at the initial stages of your validation process or idea. So look at this slide. This is a very important slide for the whole presentation today, I would say. This is kind of the mental map of a clinician. So today, as a doctor, if I have to select a treatment for my patient, what would I typically consider? One, it's my clinical experience and expertise of my previous patients. Two, definitely I would see whether it adds value to my patient or it brings him to the expectations of the patient. And the third arm is, what is the best evidence today I have got to substantiate this treatment, right? The interface of all three kind of forms the evidence-based medicine today, right? One good example or a very simple example could be today, say for a simple ailment like fever, neither you or neither the clinical community think much about using a paracetamol because it's proved in multiple settings. I got experience giving paracetamol. There's a lot of evidences across the world to use paracetamol for fever. We simply prescribe the paracetamol. I think there's not even an iota of doubt. Let's extrapolate this for technology today. Let's talk about telemedicine or teleconsultation, which is happening today. Clearly, we have most of the clinicians have individual expertise to do teleconsultation. Yes, we can develop that. Patients' values and expectations are met. Yes, in today's COVID times, patients are not able to come. So they are expecting to do some consultation over online. Look at the third piece. But do you have external evidence to substantiate this is going to be better than your conventional clinical examination come OPD consultation? Perhaps not. So today there is a reluctance among clinical community, if you see, to use telemedicine extensively for all specialties. The reason being is we don't have a strong evidence to say telemedicine is better than an face-to-face consultation for various reasons. This is just a simple example which I took. But more than the examples, what we need to remember is this is the mental map where the doctor typically looks for an evidence and whether this brings in value to the patient. Right? It could be a new innovation or drug or whatsoever. This is the mental map which the doctor uses. Right. So now let's go to what is this clinical trial? What is this evidence which we are talking about? What is this external evidence, substantiating evidence we talk about? Look at the definition of a clinical trial. So this is a WHO definition, which also says any research study which prospectively assigns human participation or group of humans to one or more health-related interventions to evaluate the effect of health outcomes. So clearly it talks about evaluation of a health outcome. So whatever technology or innovation we are using in healthcare, eventually it has to lead to some kind of an outcome. This outcome could be a process outcome in non-clinical, or it could be a clinical outcome, which we are talking about. So this kind of encompasses the entire innovation gamut under drugs, new medicines, you all know that, cells and biological products, all the new treatment protocols, which are coming in for current diseases, or all your immune modulating agents. We are talking about plasma therapy today. There are so many innovators who are trying to say immune boosting agents. All those will fall under this category. The surgical procedures, straightforward. Radiological procedures, new devices, behavioral treatments, process of care changes, and preventive care. So pretty much it encompasses all innovations out there, which has got a direct implication over the patient care, right? Okay. So it all comes down to this. A very critical slide for today's presentation. Just have a look at the slide. So this is the evidence when doctor talks about clinical validation. On a mental map, this is what a clinician is thinking. I will take you through a few examples in the forthcoming slides. But look at this pyramid very carefully. Right? On a hierarchy of evidence, clearly the lowermost is an animal or laboratory study. And then comes the next one, which is a case report, case series, a narrative, expert opinion, and editorials. You need to focus on this a little more. Today, when many of the innovators come to the hospitals to meet clinicians or the healthcare providers to adapt a new technology or innovation, most of them are coming with this level of evidence where they say, we got great reviews from some of the star clinicians in the country. We got an article on this, or we got 1 or 2 patients who is using this. But clearly that is not something in the mind of a clinician is rated very high. That's a very common mistake most of us think. Nothing wrong with that, but that's only a starting stage to build towards a much stronger evidence in clinical trial. If you look at this map, you will understand. One simple example is you have seen case reports of, say, an Apple digital watch identifying atrial fibrillation in patients and helped treat that. So that's a typical case report, right? And the patient also has given a narrative. None of the clinicians have jumped to prescribe digital watch to everybody, right? Because that's just a case report, right? It's nice to know. Expert opinions is clearly falls into the same category. This comes from some of the star doctors where they give a great review of the product. In actual reality, they themselves may be hesitant or may not be using that either. So look at the next level of evidence. So that's where your observational studies start. There are different types of studies. I'm not going to take you through the complexity of each of these studies. But on broad, we can say some are retrospective studies, some are prospective. Retrospective is basically you look at evidence from the past. Prospective is you see going from future. And in the prospective study, there are different types of studies where you do a randomized control trial so that you can eliminate certain biases. This is basically how do you pick your subjects. So the intention of this lecture is not to go on different types of studies in detail, but to understand the hierarchy of the pyramid. So clearly, above your expert opinions lies your studies. Some are observational studies. And beyond observational studies, we actually do some kind of a controlled trial. The more controlled trial, the more cohort studies which happens across the globe, they start building to multiple randomized controlled trials. And meta-analysis is nothing but you have multiple such randomized controlled trials across the globe, where now this evidence of something is much stronger and stronger. It at one point becomes a clinical practice guidelines on top, where nobody is even doubting it for a second. It becomes a common adaptation. So this is the hierarchy of the slides. You need to be very, you need to understand this very clearly, right? Unfortunate that most of us, when they come for a feedback, or most of them come with an innovation which they want healthcare to adapt, the pyramid is in the lower level. So this is not applicable for the non-clinical enablers I'm talking about. You are doing a teleconsult app and things, this may not be necessary. But this is typically important when you are doing a clinical intervention anywhere, right? Any type of a clinical intervention. So let me just move on to the next slide. Yeah. This one actually briefs you about the classes of evidence and quality of evidence. So on a brief, there are three classes of evidence, 1, 2, 3. For any research, when you do a research, the report comes out in these three formats, 1, 2, or 3. This is a format which we clinicians understand. And every single drug or every single medical intervention is based on this. So the 1, 2, 3 basically or broadly talks about class 1 evidence is pretty strong. Class 2 is probably not that strong. And class 3 is clearly weak or even harmful. This is broadly the three classes of evidence. Sorry. And also you look at the level or quality of evidence, you have about 3 here, A, B, C. Right? The A is when you have multiple such randomized control trials and meta-analysis. That means you have something which is proven by multiple randomized studies and meta-analysis. So it stays on top of the pyramid, right? And we also have a recommendation which is quite strong. There is no problem in adapting this, right? But you have a recommendation which is strong with a mediocre one or few studies, that is still okay to adapt. But if you don't have any kind of evidence or quality, at the same time you are in class 2 or 3, that means you are on the lower end of the pyramid. It becomes very difficult for a clinician to actually test it on their patients, because one, we are not very sure whether it adds value to the treatment or to the outcome, and two, also to the point where the legalities might have some implications on this. I'll touch upon that a little bit, right? So this is the evidence map which you need to create for your product to be successful. Let me take you through a clinical example and then perhaps to an innovation example. So this is a simple example where the same modality of treatment in medicine, we have a modality called inducing hypothermia. We reduce the temperature of the human body through medicaling. and purposefully for certain conditions, which we think will be beneficial for better recovery. Right? This is the evidence of class for something called hypothermia. Right? Inducing a lower temperature in the body for managing something. You look at the evidences here. The first one is clearly class 1. That means there's a lot of randomized control trials and meta-analysis which says this particular intervention will be useful in a cardiopulmonary resuscitation. That means somebody has got a cardiac arrest. There is clear evidence that we can try hypothermia. Nobody doubts it. Straight away, we are happy to use it. Whereas look at the point number 3 or 4, which is stroke. Today, somebody has got a stroke. Will the same intervention help? Clearly, the evidence is only class 3. So even though it is something to do with brain, it might help in one particular incident, but may not be in another condition. So clearly the evidence is class 3. And you got something on class 4, which is if there is somebody who's got bleeding on the brain, this modality might actually kill him. Right? So these are the level of evidences, even though it's the same type of a treatment. The organ pathologies, the organ involved is same. For different pathologies, the outcome might be very, very different. So you need to remember this in mind. You might set out to do a clinical trial of your innovation, which might have multiple outcome points. And for some it might work, and some it may not work. So the point which you need to take from this is, you need to understand when you do a clinical validation, you set out multiple objectives, right, on what you want to validate. Sometimes you might get everything right. Sometimes you may get half of it right. It happens. This is another example which I want to share from the medical field. Clearly, in these times of COVID, there are a lot of newer therapies and drugs which are being tried across the world. Right? This is one of the recommendations which have come out recently for one of the drugs. Let's, for a moment, forget about what kind of drug it is or what it does. That's not the intention of this slide. The intention is, this is a group of about 12 doctors from a premier institute in China, where they have seen this COVID cases. They got about 21 patients whom they tried this drug and recommending this to the world that this can be tried. This is clearly on the level of pyramid, comes somewhere closer to a case control study, right? An observational study. Easily these 12 doctors could have sat in front of a camera and could have given a video feedback saying this is a great drug, it does wonders. But why did they go ahead and do a case control study and come up with the statistics to clearly show with a p-value that this did work for them, right? Because they understand clinicians will only look at evidences. The more evidences like this we build for new drug like this across the globe, the more and more control studies come in. Eventually we'll be able to try this on a particular cohort of patients. The evidence will become stronger and then we have a new therapy for the patients. Given with this one report, it's not that like the doctors are very excited that they're going to try all this. So when a doctor typically sees or evaluates, look at the first mental map which I gave you. Does it add value to the patient? Yes, COVID is a critical situation. We still don't know what we are dealing with in many situations. It will add value, but is there a strong evidence? I have a strong evidence of feedback spoken by a doctor versus I have a publication on that, where there is a case control study done. Clearly, this plays to the mind of a clinician to adapt this better, right? So that's why I wanted to put this example. And the next one is typically on technology. Now look at this. It's an interesting slide here. The lowermost part, if you focus on it, typically talks about measure and provide heart rate for the purpose of maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Typically, what's your Fitbit trying to do, right? Clearly, it doesn't need any regulations, and this is not typically in healthcare, or we're not going to do any health intervention decisions based on this. So it is not a part of medical device henceforth, so we're not really worried about validation. But suppose you come back and tell us I have a monitoring device which will help you to make a clinical decision or an intervention or a course change, like interpret output and deliver a shock if needed, or change the course of medicine. That means as a clinical intervention. So clearly you cannot expect a clinician to take or adapt this easily, because in the mental map, the evidence to adapt that is still not there, right? So that means this is where you actually need clinical validation, because you are going into the space of clinical intervention and measuring outcomes or changing outcomes, right? So clearly, the more increasing clinical risk, that means more increasing technological complexity, that means more you need clinical validation to prove that. That's the intention of this slide. Abroad, it's quite easier because you got a lot of helping around for you to do these validations, unlike India. For example, the NHS in UK, the National Health System, they themselves will help innovators to do this validation across healthcare setups. And there are also a few private players in this. These are some of the examples. But unfortunately, in India, we don't have an organized setup yet to help these validations. We are trying to get it through CAHO to an extent. And also institutions like Dr. Mehta's play a significant part in validating healthcare setups, because we understand we need to bridge that gap which is existing today. But in India, how it functions is still you need to get a clinical validation done through a hospital setup. So before I go on to the clinical validation process, let's quickly look at who is going to give you this clearance to do the clinical validation in a hospital. It's typically the ethical committee, which is accredited by the ICMR, which sits in a hospital. But let's have a quick look at who sits in this ethical committee to give you this validation. It has a chairperson, usually it will be a doctor. One or two persons from basic medical science area. Basic medical sciences here, it basically represents anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, microbiology, and not clinical. Two clinicians from various other institutions. There is a legal expert, there is a social scientist, philosopher, a layperson from the community, and a member secretary. These are the people who are actually sitting and validating your ethical committee application forms. It's kind of unfortunate that there is no technical or technology expert in this group. We may be lucky if you find somebody from, say, the 5, 6, or 7 in this slide. But unfortunately, there is no innovation expert. That's where the complexity starts. Because typically, the ethical committees are used to seeing doctors trying to validate some of their study findings, some of their studies on case control or existing drugs, which one is better, A versus B. But not many institutions are used to seeing validating innovations or new technology. So this is where my first point comes into play, where you need to have a clinical mentor. To present your clinical, your innovation to this group, and to also to reasonably get an buy-in and validation, buy-in and approval from this ethical committee. It takes a clinician to convince this group, right? First, that's the reason why you need to start involving these clinicians from stage 1. Otherwise, it becomes difficult for somebody to get you through this process. But what is the process of validation in a hospital? So this is an entire process of validation in a hospital, where you need to set out to do an abstract. Basically, it needs to have clear objectives, methodology, your study population, your expected study population numbers, and then it has to go through an ethical committee approval. Once you get through an ethical committee approval, if it involves a clinic patient, you need to have a consent design for the patient to participate in the study. And then you do a complete study process map, where you will see what are the interventions you're going to doing at what point. Your data collection performer, you do a couple of test runs, start collecting data, start analyzing it, and you will get to the result. Looks a quite simple map, but for each of these processes, there are certain complexities. These are slightly beyond the scope of today's webinar. But however, each of ones will take a significant amount of time, and also coordination from your clinical team as well as your technological team. Okay. A typical process timing for that is somewhere around 4 months to reach the point where you can finish your study, assuming all of these points go fairly well and smooth. If you are looking at an institution which wants to not just help validate, but also during this process to handhold you to correct your innovation or to make it little better, then the process time might be somewhere from 6 months to even a year. Why this is important is You need to understand you are investing a significant amount of time to validate this. If you want your product to be successful, innovation to be successful, being adopted by clinicians, patients, or hospitals across different settings, you need to go through this process, and this is painful and longer process. These are typically the challenges you will face during this process. At least from our experience, I could clearly say, keeping the team together to focus on this is going to be extremely critical. The team from both the sides. You need to get the clinical team from the hospital which is helping you validate, and also your own innovation team. Most of the times we see these teams fall apart, or beyond certain point, there is typically a burnout and they don't follow through. Time is very critical. Clinicians are typically time starved. So that means finding a clinician time is going to be much difficult here. There is a cost to this validation as well. We need to understand that, because it involves time as well as a certain process changes. And the interest level of certain things also drops, and it's also mutual to each other, right? So if you don't see the team which has asked us to help validate certain things from our hospital, and if you see them disappear after a certain time, or they're very patchy, clearly the clinical team will have no interest to further help or guide. So these are some of the challenges which you face during validation. I'm just taking you through an example of something which we validated from our institution. This is basically a set of vital parameters we validated and see how we could automate these vital measurements. You could clearly see you need to have a detailed abstract and also calculate a sample size. Look at the last box here. I would like to draw your attention to the last piece here. Basically, in this study, we tried to validate temperature, blood pressure, saturation, and pulse. Right? Just look at the last two boxes, the standard deviation of these vitals and the required sample size. Just to validate your heart rate, which has a huge normal variability between 60 to 100, that's about 40. You typically need a sample size of around 160,000 to see like that this is statistically you can prove that there is a null hypothesis or significant variability. Many times what happens is we think it's only a validation from 10 patients, 20 patients, 30 patients. And here I have a report or even a feedback from somebody saying, I have a report saying it has been used by 10 patient, 20 patient, and it works. But typically we understand that that is not going to be good enough, because we know there's a lot of standard deviation. That means your number of sample size matters. To get this much of sample size, it's not going to be easy for you to do it over a 2 months or 3 months period. That means for your particular type of innovation validation, you need to select the right hospitals where that kind of a patients walk in. You need to invest significant amount of time to get this sample data. That means there is somebody who is meticulously collecting this data and monitoring it on a regular basis, and also coming out with a statistical result at the end of it. So it is complex. So let me touch upon a little more on the right influences. So far we've talked about the feedback. What is the difference between a feedback and actual clinical validation, where you require it? Assuming we have a feedback on some of your non-clinical innovations, who is the right team to help you take your innovation forward? Many a times we tend to think it's your star doctors, but that may not be the case. So, not that we are having something against the star doctors, but clearly when you have industry leaders speak it for you, you have a better chance of success. When I say industry leaders, like Dr. Mehta, there are a few other hospitals as well who do this as a part of their value system, where you clearly need to get a good hospital to validate and speak for yourself. Associations like CAHO, AHPA, where it's a consortium of multiple institutions who understand the value of innovation. When they do a feedback for you, it has much more value than an individual doing a feedback. Right? So try to leverage the hospitals, clinical associations, and some of the industry experts, and of course associations like CAHO, AHPA will be helping you in this validation process, as well as to give a proper feedback across the healthcare community. And not just that, they'll be happy to connect any of these innovations and innovators across a larger audience, which at this point in time, very difficult as an individual or as an individual incubator for you to approach. You also need to be aware of certain important things in this framework. In India, it is actually kind of tricky to validate any of your clinical trials because of February 2020. Unfortunately, all your medical devices are brought under the ambit of drugs and under the ambit of drugs and cosmetic acts. That basically means me testing a new drug for a disease today is same as me testing a new BP apparatus or a new pulse oximeter where you measure a saturation. Bit unfortunate, but that's where we are today. So clearly there are certain regulations and laws which govern all these validations today, which is Drugs and Cosmetics Acts, Ethical Guidelines of Indian Council of Medical Research, Indian Good Clinical Practice Guidelines, Medical Device Rules 2017. And as of February 2020, as I said, it comes under all the innovations and including your monitors and your equipments all come under this act, so making it tricky to validate. Just to give an overall idea or picture about a drug approval process in India and how tedious it is. This is where we are. From the time of drug discovery, for you to even reach a phase 1 or phase 2 study, that is basically a case control or even a cohort study, and to get it approved for you to use it on a patient, it is somewhere between 2 to 6 years is what we are talking of. Hope for some of our innovations and technology, it doesn't take this long. But this is where we are pretty much in Indian context. So we have come to the end of the presentation. Let me quickly summarize what we discussed and just give you some take-home points for today. Clearly, feedback and clinical validation is not the same. Know what you require. That's basically dependent on what kind of an innovation you are developing. Either it is preclinical or process or clinical. Understand the clinician's thought process. When we ask for a validation, when I say we, it's when the clinical community typically asks for validation or evidence. It is not just a feedback or case report. We are talking about something much higher than that. Always get a clinical mentor right from the early days for 2 reasons. 1, to validate your problem, and 2, to typically help you through the ethical committee process, and also to help you with the validation process throughout, because the process is going to be about 6 months to 1 year sometimes. Pick a good hospital for validation, somebody who will understand the importance of innovation and technology, and somebody who will be happy to help you get your products validated, like Mehta's, for example. Get feedback from influencer groups, which is useful, like CAHO, associations. There are various clinical associations like Emergency Medicine Association, Critical Care Associations, depends on the product which you have, or clinical teams from the hospitals. It's much better than getting an individual feedback. If you could actually get some real use cases in hospitals and show some real outcomes, there's nothing like it. So, and be aware of the timelines and process for approval and legal regulatory requirements. In spite of going through all these studies, clearly you need to have an approval from the agencies and the law agencies and drug controllers and things like that. So without your regulatory authorities like FDA or CE certification, it's very difficult for clinicians to adapt any of these innovations. I think hopefully I have taken you through a broad idea on where we are today on clinical validation and what is as of today. Hope in the future, at least, we make this process a little more simpler and get to see more healthcare innovations in this country. Thank you and best wishes. So what we will do now is probably we can take few questions is what I feel. Okay, so we got few questions here. Let me take some of those which are pertaining to the topics today. For diagnostics development, do we have to follow the same procedures as Drugs, absolutely, because based on your diagnostic results, there is going to be a clinical intervention which we will be doing. Okay? If your results, that means, are false negatives, that means this is going to be dangerous for the patient. Likewise, if it's a false positive, that's dangerous too. So yes, it needs to have a proper validation. Even during situations like COVID, do we have to follow the same sample size? The sample size is not dependent on the situation of COVID or not. It is typically dependent on the standard deviation of the parameter which you are studying. And you need to get that adequate sample size to prove it statistically whether it is a significant or non-significant study. How far telemedicine can be used in rural areas? I think this is slightly off today's topic. Definitely yes, why not? With today's improvement in technology, definitely yes. Is there any chance to get a masked data set from the hospitals? I think this question is basically for a data analysis in the back end. Clearly, data privacy is of concern. Definitely, having said that, the answer to this is both yes and no. To a certain degree, yes, we'll be able to share, and certain things not. It also depends on what kind of data set you are requiring from these hospitals. And somebody is raising the hands.
Sir, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Yes, sir. Sir, so would you want to take any participants on audio, or we have in the Q&A section? So we would usually take the Q&A. Can we proceed in the same manner?
Yeah, Q&A is almost, I'm coming to the last question.
Exactly, sir, yeah.
So maybe once I finish this, we'll take 1 or 2 audience questions as well.
Yeah, sure, sir.
Or those who have questions, they can start typing so that once we finish this, we can go to the
Yes, I'll take them on audio. So
yeah.
Participants who have questions, you can type in the questions in the chat window. So post answering Q&A, we'll also take you over audio.
Okay. So there are some quick questions on, is it necessary to get a consent for validation? Definitely yes. Any of the validations involving patient, we need to have a disclosure and a consent. And for every patient, that's correct. So what's your stand on UV-based products? So clearly, if you would have looked at my second slide, there are some category which falls in between both. For example, your vitals continuous measurement device, where you may choose to take a decision based on the reports. You might only use it probably as a monitoring one, but you may not really take a decision based on this. You will have a secondary validation to it. In that case, it's fine. Similar to UV-based products, as long as if you could prove to a reasonable degree that post-sterilization, the outcome is better, it's still okay. You don't have to undergo a detailed clinical validation. The feedback should be enough. I think we have come to, there is a question on why ethical committee, there are so many people. Unfortunately, those are recommendations from ICMR. It's not a hospital or an individual's decision. This is what the Indian Council for Medical Research wants. Okay, I think we have come to the end of
Yes,
the
sir.
questions for today. Is there any on live questions we can take?
Yes, sir, we will, sir. Just we have a quick poll before that. So participants, I'll be sharing a poll which will allow you to rate this session. I'll launch the poll right now. It should appear on your screen. Please vote the session based on your liking. Okay, sir, we have one Miss Saloni. We'll try and take her on audio.
Yes, sir, please.
Okay, I think I'm able to pull her on audio. Okay, we'll take Mr. Ravi Senji.
I won't be able to see the videos, isn't it?
Yes, the video is visible, sir.
And my video is also not visible to myself.
So there seems to be some issues. I'm not able to take them. No, sir, I think there seems to be some issue with this.
There's also a question now asking, is it acceptable to conduct a trial in clinics? As I said, if you conduct a trial, any trial, it has to undergo an ethical committee. approval. The ethical committee approval is typically only possible with an ICMR approved ethical committee team, which only sits in a hospital for now. With the clinics, yes. For non-clinical interventions, yes, you can. For something to do with process and things like that, definitely that feedback will help.
So one more question which you received is, do hand washes also need clinical approval and trials?
Okay, so this again falls in the ambit of, so neither this way or not that way. It doesn't require a clinical trial as such, right? But if you are recommending or claiming that this is going to be effective to a certain degree of percentage of killing germs, then definitely yes.
Sir, and one more question is, what are the recommendations to validate digital health technologies?
So again, the digital health technologies, when I say digital health is a very broad term, let me take two examples from that. One, you are saying, say you have a backend data analysis, or you are trying to do something on data. You don't really need to undergo a clinical trial for it, but that's different. But when you say you are measuring somebody's vital parameters or certain parameters, and you're trying to make a clinical sense out of it, and you're coming out with a clinical decision recommendation, that has to go through a validation.
Okay, sir, I suppose, yeah, we do not have any further questions. Okay, so, okay, so you have remedy for, is there a remedy for COVID-19? Do you have some ideas?
I think we just passed through that in one of the slides. There are a few interesting case control studies appearing for now. We still don't have concrete evidence of some of those new drugs which are being tried. So far, the treatment still remains symptomatic and supportive. We don't have a specific drug yet. Hopefully, we will get to see something soon.
Doctor, this is behalf of the startup. I'm just asking, if they need to validate their product, how do they have to approach Mehta's hospital?
Okay. So if you want to approach us, you are most welcome to write to us directly, either through your incubation center or directly, preferably through your incubation center. I have given my email ID on the screen, which you can see now. So you can write to us, and then we will connect you, and eventually we will have further discussions on what you want to validate. That's one way of connecting. So if there's another platforms where you want to see, explore the opportunities for a group kind of validation, you can also write to us or to Kaho directly. We'll be able to guide you or help you through a collective feedback mechanism. Kaho stands for Consortium of Accredited Healthcare Organizations.
Sir, we have the last question.
Yes.
Any recommendations to valid nano-based solutions effective against COVID?
So anything to treat with COVID. So when you are talking about this, is typically, again, you are saying it's a clinical intervention, right? That means it has to undergo a clinical trial unless there is evidence. No clinician is going to adapt this on his day-to-day practice. Clearly, it needs a clinical validation. That is where currently we do get a lot of queries regarding, say, a plasma therapy or an immune modulating therapy, herbal solutions for many of these things. These are clearly clinical interventions, right? So these are basically you're trying to change the outcome of the disease. That means it has to have a trial, and without substantiating evidence, no clinician will be happy to adapt this.
Okay, sir. I think that's the questions we have for today. So again, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for the session, and a larger thank you, for being one of the doctors who's helping us overcome COVID. We hear quite a lot about Mehta's Hospital doing their part for helping us fight COVID. So thank you so much for that as well.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and stay safe, all of you. Best wishes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, participants, and thank you, sir. If you voted, you may leave the webinar. We'll be sharing the certificate shortly. Thank you, doctor. Thank you, participants. I'll end the webinar now.
Thank you.